Hey everybody, Fetty here, and welcome to part 7 of my How to Build a Pole Barn series. As you can see behind me, I'm kind of done. Got the roof on, got the ridge cap on, got the gable trim on, got some insulation in there, and I'm feeling really good about it. Now I still need to pretty it up with some siding or whatever and put some doors on it and all that kind of stuff, but I'll fool with that over the summer. As far as being usable and functional, well, you can see I got my old tractor in there, and this is kind of funny. Somewhere along the way during this project, I traded on that old truck, and I wasn't really counting on having to use that bay for an old truck when I planned out this building, so I'm probably going to have to add on to the barn, but that's just the way it goes. You never make it big enough. And getting this roof on's been hard. It's been tough here this winter, and every time I'd line up some help to come out here and work on it with me, well, Mother Nature would drop a napalm bomb on me and mess everything up. But I finally got it done. Now, somewhere along the way, I caught a Saturday, and it was really nice, and I was wanting to work on it, and I came out here and I spent 5 hours, and I put up 2 panels. Now, you talk about discouraging, and to put that in perspective, when I finally did get a couple of guys out here, we spent 5 hours and put up 20 panels. So that kind of shows you, yeah, you could do this by yourself, but it would take forever. So I finally got some help out here and we got this roof on, but it was really hard to take footage while we were doing that because I didn't want to slow down progress. So when we did the front, I stayed on the ground and I handed stuff up and I ran the camera. So I do have some footage of the panels going on the front of the barn. Now when we did the back, I was up there, so I don't have any footage of that. Just use your imagination. Now at the end of the day, we had all the panels on, and I had to come back a couple weeks later and put the ridge cap and all the gable trim on. So today I want to show you how we went about getting this roof on, and I thought the best way to do that would be to build a model of the roof up in the shop, and that way I can show you with ease exactly what we did to put this roof on. So let's reconvene up to the shop and let's get started. Now what I have behind me here is kind of a mock-up of my roof, and it's not to scale or anything, but this model is a pretty good representation of what that roof's like. I've got my trusses here, got purlins, got a fascia board, even got some scab boards that I use down there. So everything on here is just like it looked down there, except not to scale. Now before we go any further, I just want to make it clear, I'm not trying to represent myself as a metal roofing expert, because I'm not. I know that there are people out there that know tips and tricks and hints that I don't know. All I'm trying to do is show you how I put the roof on my barn. But I think it's like a lot of things, we don't need to make more mystery and ooh around it than we really need to, because basically we're just screwing down roofing panels. So, you know, there's no point to overcomplicate it. Now before you get too far along in your roofing project, you kind of need to think about which way does the wind normally blow. And the reason is because we're going to be working with material that's going to have seams in it. And to the best of your ability, you want your seams to be oriented in such a way that the wind is going to blow over it and not up and under it. Now, is it going to matter in the short run? Probably not, but Mother Nature has a way of annihilating things, and I've never really understood it, but it will. So over time, if you have your seams oriented where it's kind of catching the wind, you know, that first year or 2 or 5, it might wiggle it up a little bit, and then that next couple of years, it might wiggle it up a little more, but it will probably find a way down the road in the long run of getting up under there, and a bad storm will come, and it might blow that panel off. So if we can plan a little bit now on the front end, it might save us some aggravation down the road. So for the purpose of this video, we're going to assume that the wind is blowing this way, right here. So let's go ahead and get started, and throughout this video I'm going to try to mix in some footage of me actually doing it for real on the actual barn. Now when you're working with this metal, you need to wear some gloves, because this stuff's sharp and it will lay you open. If you're not careful, you'll be laid up down there at the emergency room getting stitches. So, you know, wear some good gloves, and just be aware, this stuff's sharp and it'll gut you if you're not careful. So now the first thing we're going to work with is this drip edge right here. That's what that looks like. And it lays on here on your fascia board and runs up your roof. I think that's probably, I don't know, it's 3.5 or 4 inches right there. And you're not going to have more than likely one continuous run of this. I think mine came in 10-foot sections, so I have seams in mine. And the best you can do is right here where you have to seam it. I came in, I don't know, maybe 2 inches, 2.5 inches or something like that, and just laid it on top of it and kept going with it. Now you got to be careful, because where you seam it right there, it'll make it want to kick out a little bit and kick it on out as it goes on down the line there. So you got to kind of be careful with that. But that's what I did. I just laid it over a couple inches and went with it. Now it's not too hard to cut this stuff with a good pair of tin snips. Just take your time and be careful and pay attention to what you're doing. You can make pretty good straight cuts on it. So I'm just going to cut the end of this drip edge. Gets a little hinky down there at the end because where it's folded over, you got to kind of deal with that. Now this drip edge attaches to your roof with just some galvanized roofing nails just to kind of tack it down. And that's one of the little uh-ohs that I ran into, because the way that my roof was framed was like this. And I didn't have anywhere to attach that drip edge. So what I had to do was cut a scab board. So I took a 2x4 and put it on the table saw and cut it to whatever a 412 is, about 18.5 degrees. And cut that angle on it, and then I came back in behind here, behind the fascia board, and scabbed it in like this, so that this drip edge would have something that I could attach to. Let me get this laid up here and just get it tacked on and started, so it won't fall off, and then I'll tell you how I went about it. Go ahead and get you a pack of 1/8" drill bits, because you'll be using that size a lot in this project. Now the way that this drip edge attaches, you just tack it down with a little galvanized roofing nail. That's all you do. Now you can nail through this stuff. You can persuade it to go through that pretty easy, but it's a little bit aggravating when you're trying to hold it in place and you're up on a ladder and all that kind of stuff. So what I did was I went ahead and just drilled some pilot holes about every 18 inches, and that made it a lot easier when I carried it up on the ladder and had to fool with it. So let me drill some holes. Then all I did was just take that little roofing nail and went ahead and just beat it into place. See, you're just tacking this down because later on when that roof panel comes over it, well, it'll take a screw right there. So this drip edge ain't going to go anywhere. We're just wanting to hold it in place for now. Now I went ahead and insulated my roof, and the reason that I did that is a lot of times when the temperature gets to changing, these metal roofs will get to sweating, and when that happens, it'll get to raining inside your barn, and I didn't want to be dealing with that. By using this reflective insulation, it does two things. One is it creates a barrier there, so if it does get to sweating, well, it'll catch that water. And then the other thing is the space in that between the insulation and your roof, there's a lot of heat in there, so it'll evaporate that water off real quick. So this is what I use, and I don't have to worry about it raining in my barn. Now I never put this stuff on before, so as I was thinking about how to install it, I was getting a little perplexed because intuitively everything was telling me to kind of run it this way and then lap it over so on and so forth. This stuff, the way I bought it, it comes in a 6-foot roll, and then I bought a 4-foot roll. So as I was thinking about the practicality of doing it that way and dealing with a 6-foot roll of insulation, running it out 32 feet and the wind blowing and flopping around and trying to get up here and work and get a panel on, I just realized that probably wasn't going to go anywhere good. So I went to the manufacturer's website, and they actually recommend putting it this way. In fact, they recommend just kind of butting the seams up and taping them off on the top and going with it. Now, I didn't butt it up together. What I did was I went ahead and lapped it over 2 or 3 inches right here on those seams, and it turned out fine. Now I'm probably going to have to go in there sometime and tape those seams up, because I've already noticed birds wanting to explore in there, and I don't want to be dealing with birds' nests in my roof and my insulation. But as far as, you know, the method of installation and the technique and how it turned out, I'm satisfied doing it this way because it turned out fine. Now, this stuff that I bought, it's called double bubble, so I think it has like an R7 value, and the white side goes down and the reflective side goes up. And that day that I was trying to do it by myself, it was really aggravating because I had that big roll and I'm trying to roll it down the purlins and the wind's blowing, and it was aggravating. But when we got 2 people out there, it wasn't bad at all. What I did was just, you know, we rolled it out and just stapled it down, because you're getting ready to immediately have a roof panel go on it. So just staple it in a few places and that'll hold it in place till you get the roof panel on. So we took this insulation and just rolled it out, rolled it a little heavy on the end, trim that off in a minute. And once we kind of had it lined up and pretty good and straight and square, we took a stapler and just tacked it down. You don't got to get too wound up with it, because like I said, you're going to have a roof panel go on in here in just a second. So then we come in with our next piece and we lapped it over, I don't know, 2 or 3 inches, 3 or 4 inches wouldn't matter. Rolled it out that way and then tacked that piece down with staples. Anyway, you just come in here and trim it off. And I just run it down to the edge of the drip edge. You can go ahead right here at your ridge and cut that out now, or when you go to put the ridge cap on, but you'll need to kind of cut it out a little bit to have a vent. Now there's a right way and a wrong way to install these panels. Each side of this panel is unique, and you have to make sure that you install it in the right sequence so the seam is installed correctly. And what I mean by that is, if you look at this panel right here, this end doesn't really have much of a leg on it. And this is the end that's on top. This end has this real big leg right here. And I'm going to tell you, this is kind of a remnant piece that I got from the metal supply shop. Usually the leg on this is a lot shorter than this. I mean, it'll stick out just a little bit from that bend. I don't know, maybe a 1/4 inch or an 1/8 inch. It's not very much. So this is an unusual piece. Just keep that in mind. The small leg, or the small piece right here, that's what goes on top of your seam. So now it's time to go ahead and start putting these roof panels on. Let's talk about something for a minute. When you order your metal, they'll cut it to whatever length you want them to. So you need to make sure you measure just right. You don't want to measure and have them too short, because they probably won't take them back. And you really don't want to have them too long either, because if that's the case, you're going to have to cut them, and that's just going to add time and aggravation to your project. Now the way that I determined my measurement is I knew that from the top of my truss at the peak down to the end of my truss was 13 feet 11 inches. Okay, that doesn't take into account your fascia board. It's just from the top of the truss to the bottom of the truss. Mine was 13 feet 11 inches. I ordered 14-foot metal. What that allowed me to do was lay the panel on the roof, bring it off of the ridge, clear the fascia board, come to the edge of the drip edge, and then I held it over the drip edge about 1/4 of an inch. And that way it broke real nice across that top purlin. Now you don't screw it down right there yet in that top purlin because the ridge cap will go over and you'll screw through the ridge cap and through the top of the panel, and that'll screw into that top purlin. Now when you're lifting these big panels up, a big 14-foot panel, it helps if you can kind of bow it up a little bit. And that way you can get a little more, I don't know, a little more leverage as you lift it up. Of course, this is only a 3-foot panel, but imagine this was 14 feet. If you flex it a little bit, it helps you to lift it up a little more. So you lift that panel up, and I'm just lining it up flush here on the end. Of course, this is the little side here that doesn't have the leg, and I'm lining it up on the end. I'm going to bring it down to the edge of the drip edge, and then I'm going to hold it over the drip edge about 1/4 inch. I took a little block and, you know, a little sliver so that I'd have a little gauge that I could lay up in there, and, you know, I knew it was 1/4 inch and I could lay right there and say, yep, there's where I need to be. Okay, I've kind of tacked this panel into place with a couple of screws on the end. Now if we were doing this for real, I wouldn't have put any screws on the end because there's a piece of trim that's going to go over that. So I'll take them out in just a minute, but for now it'll keep it from falling off while I'm talking to you. Now obviously you want your screws to run straight and hit a purlin every time. Now what a lot of people will say to do is, you know, measure from your purlins and mark your metal and pre-drill your metal, and then stack 4 or 5 sheets of metal together and pre-drill several at a time. And that sounds good, and you know, in some cases it might work out good, but here's the deal. We're working on a 32-foot span, and we're trying to hit little bitty screw holes in an 1.5-inch purlin. And the chances that that purlin is going to run straight and that the building and trusses are going to be perfectly square and that you can pre-drill your holes and life is going to be great, it kind of scares me. I didn't do it that way, and I'm glad I didn't, because as it turns out, my trusses weren't perfectly square and my purlins didn't run perfectly straight. So if I would have pre-drilled all that metal, I'd have had a mess and I'd have probably wasted a lot of money. But I'll tell you, the way that worked pretty good for me. And I didn't miss but, you know, a couple of holes. So I feel pretty good about it. Now you got to imagine, when we ran this insulation out, we didn't run it out over the whole building and then put the metal up. We ran out enough insulation to cover, you know, the area of the panel that we were working on. So that being the case, I could look down through there and see where those purlins were running. By taking like a drywall square or even a framing square, well, I could come in here and find where that purlin's running, lay it up on my metal, you know, get it lined up real good, and then just come across and put marks on my metal, and it worked out fine. Now what you might want to do is take some painter's tape or something and kind of cover this up so you don't scratch up your metal, but this worked just fine. So let's talk about another one of those age-old questions. Do I put my screws in the rib or in the flat? And I realize this is an explosive topic, sure to start a lot of pissing matches, and that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just telling you how I did my barn. But let's think about something for a minute. Where is the water going to stay the longest? In the rib or in the flat? You know, it seems to me that the water is going to run off this rib and spend a shorter amount of time on that rib than it does the flat. I chose to put my screws in the rib, because every barn that I've ever seen that is standing after many years and doesn't leak, the screws are in the rib and it's holding up just fine. So that's what I tried to do. I'm not here to tell you the right way or the wrong way or the best way. This is how I did my barn, and you know, kind of do your own research and decide for yourself. Now when you put your screws in, you'll be using a screw something like this, and it'll have a little washer, a little gasket on it. Now you don't want to torque a piss out of it and mash that gasket up and, you know, blow it out to size, because you'll be defeating the purpose. That gasket is supposed to be compressed a little bit, you know, to make a good seal to keep water out. So don't just, you know, torque the daylights out of it. Just compress it enough that gasket don't squeeze and blow out the sides, but it, you know, it's good and snug and good and tight. So as usual, this video is running pretty long, but there's still a whole lot more that I want to cover, so I'm going to continue on in another video. So just go ahead and click and follow me on over, and we'll pick up right where we left off. Thanks for watching. Why Mother Nature drop a napalm bomb on me and mess everything up. Got the ridge cap on, got the gable trim, got some insulation in it. Of my How to Build a Pole Barn series. My voice is going. Hey everybody, Fetty here, and welcome to part 7 of my How to Build a Pole. Got the gable trim, got it dried. Had a really hard time. Got this old cold. Got it dried. If you could do it, but it would take forever.